Welcome back to The Rule of Law the Academy Speaks with your host, Joe Tucker. Here's part 2 of Democracy, a worthwhile work in progress.
Well, let's talk about Russia and Ukraine and how Europe is feeling about that. And has that helped further solidify the rule of law in in Europe, or is it falling by the wayside based upon the war that Russia started against Ukraine?
I think that the general view in Europe is that we need to stand together and prevent Russia to further invade Europe and destroy our democracies
Then,
and our freedom. Because if you end democracy, you will not have freedom. The rights. It is very important in a democracy that the vulnerable and the minority are protected. The people are protected, protected against their own government, and that the government should abide with the rules.
What's the European take then on Trump's meeting with Putin? Has there been a sentiment expressed in Europe or a concern about that meeting?
What I see is just a show. Maybe it was just for having a nice picture, and it will play into Putin's playbook. You have to be careful. But I also, on the other hand, I think it's very good there is a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
But there can only be a dialogue about the peace in Ukraine if the players that are concerned, that are part of it, are part of the discussion. So you can only talk about peace if you include Ukraine.
Yes.
And also if you include Europe.
Well, let's go back to something you raised, which I want to come back to now, and that's what's going on in Hungary. Do you think that, and with the erosion of the rule of law, you have a want-to-be dictator in Hungary? Is that type of erosion of the rule of law and the erosion of democracy, do you think that is isolated to Hungary, or is that starting to spread? Because as we know, democracies are the minority in the world.
Yeah, that's true. It's a great question, Joe, and difficult to answer. The European Union is a unity in diversity. Every country has its own set of rules,
Mm-hmm.
and its own way of dealing with elections and how the government is elected. Some countries have still a royalty, a king, like we do in the Netherlands, and we have a parliament. We have a multi-party system. So, in my personal opinion, democracies, but that's my view, is that it is democracies are stronger when you have a multi-party system. Maybe not as much as multi-party as in the Netherlands, but if you have a multi-party system, at least it will be less divisive, because you have not one party against the other, that you can just that's divisive. Don't you agree?
Yes, I agree. And there is a talk in America that the two-party system doesn't necessarily speak for the voice of America. You have extremes of the left and the right here in America. But I still want to go back to talking about, and I'll call it the creep of fascism, and the concern that some people have in Europe about Hungary being an outlier, or is Hungary a predictor of what's going to be happening in Europe?
Yeah, well, my personal opinion is that Hungary is not the example, or that will automatically spread through Europe. Again, Europe is unity in diversity. The countries are very different. The histories of the countries differ. The people living in the countries differ. And the languages differ. So it is a difference, but I do believe that there is a tendency also in the Netherlands that there's more, fascism, and that we have to be alert, and that we have to see to it that that it is minimized, and people may speak out. Of course, you have the freedom of speech, but we, from our history, we know what evil has happened and what can happen, and that your freedom can be taken away. So we must at all costs prevent it from further spreading.
Antoinette, one of the important things, or one of the important associations that the Academy has, is with the Journalists in Exile program, where we have journalists from all around the world. What's the importance of journalists from your perspective in Europe and what's going on around the world?
Well, journalists are one of the important pillars of democracy. They establish the facts, they research the facts, and they are our eyes, and they are extremely important. And my view is that they should be protected. And that if you, I know that there are countries where the safety of journalists are not guaranteed, and that journalists have to fear for their lives. And I think in a democracy that should not happen, and it is wrong to kill journalists. Albeit in Somalia, be it in Israel, or be it in Gaza, or in Ukraine, everywhere in the world where there is a conflict, journalists should be able to work and work without being killed.
We sometimes refer to them in America as the fourth state. That is, we have the legislative, we have the judicial, and we have the executive, and we sometimes refer to journalists and papers as the fourth estate because they keep everyone honest as doing independent investigations. Is that view sort of shared in Europe also? Yeah,
absolutely. Fully shared. And we just talked about the misinformation, and the journalists are there to set the facts straight. So they have to fact check and see to it that that we get the truth.
Antoinette, the rule of law is under attack from many people's perspective here in America. And I want to know if you see that same type of impact in Europe, or do you see, because of the rule of law being attacked in America, it's getting stronger in Europe, or has America set the standard now for attacks upon journalists and attacks upon the rule of law? How has Europe responded to what's going on here in America?
Well, I look at America, and I'm really troubled about what is happening and going on in America. However, in Europe, we still have our rule of law. And I maybe with some exceptions, I'm not sure, but within Europe itself, I believe we still have the journalists as strong pillars of our democracy.
Do you think it's getting stronger, the rule of law in Europe, because of what you're seeing here in America? Or you think it's staying the same? What's your perspective on that?
We have to be cautious. We have to work. We also have weaknesses in our system. And we see that, that we are also under attack, and that we need to be really careful, and that we need to keep working on democracy. We need to keep protecting the rule of law. But I also have to say we have such an entirely different system. Also, with we do not have, at least in the Netherlands, we do not have elected judges. We do not have jury trials. Our Supreme Court is not elected. These are people that are appointed for life. They are not attached to, or not party, belong to any political party. There are just independent judges with a strong track record and education as judges.
Well, in our federal court system here in America, our judges are appointed also. But I can tell you that our judges have been under attack from the executive office and from citizens who don't like the rulings of the judges. There have been attempted murders and a murder of one judge's family from people who are upset with the rulings. And that's been very, very concerning, that we've had the attacks on judges, both by the executive office and by podcasters and talking heads. Has that arisen in Europe yet, where the citizens are attacking the judges?
It might, but I'm not aware of that it is problematic. But I do know that it is not coming from the executive. So
Yes.
our government, we have the strong the pillars of our democracy are still based on the French Code Civil, and the strong belief that we have the separation of powers. So the executive branch and the judiciary, the journalists, and the parliament. So it's still it's still strong, but we need to be careful. There are a lot of people that watch TikTok films or are not content with a judgment that has always been there, but now it's more amplified with all the social media. We have people that do not believe that they are bound by any rules at all, and these people are causing problems. They are problematic. We have attacks on lawyers. Recently, or a couple of years ago, a lawyer was killed. But that has to do with the drugs cartels, etc. But we have to be careful. It is, again, not a given that you have a democracy, not a given that you have freedom. We see things that happen in America, but not in such a way as it happens in America.
I hope we're giving you guys a cautionary tale of how precarious democracy can be and the rule of law can be by what's happening right now here in America. And don't take it for granted. I know I'm preaching to the choir with telling you that, but I would suggest to you that democracy is fragile, and we're proving it to be true right now with what's going on. But I want to end with a final question, because I know you were one of the many fellows who came to our meeting here in America. You said you were here to be part of the resistance. As you look across the pond over here at us, what hope should you give us that we're going to make it through, and that the rule of law is going to survive, the attack on the judiciary will subside? throw us a lifeline over across the pond that we should be hopeful about.
I think you Americans are resilient and very positive. You're fighters. I strongly believe that also as lawyers and journalists, etc., that you will find the way, but it will take time and it needs courage, and you have to fight. You have to fight for democracy. You have to fight for the rule of law, and also don't be afraid to look at other countries and see how democracy works in other countries. Every democracy has its flaws.
Yes.
Every system has its flaws, and we can learn from each other and make it stronger.
Who knows? Maybe you'll inspire another party here in America through this podcast. We can only wish. And Antoinette, I want to thank you for talking to us. We've appreciated your view of Europe and your view as a European looking across the pond at us. And I think this has been it's been very informative to me. And I want to thank all of our listeners to listening to The Rule of Law, The Academy Speaks. I'm Joe Tucker, president of the Academy. Catch this podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.